bienvenue, hello and welcome. I have the video for this week, and this week we are looking at the trial by Franz Kafka. That took me so long to read. It is not a very long book, but anyway, before I get on to the trials that I had with the trial, if you want to support us, remember there is our shop where we have books and writing services. There is also our Redbubble shop where we have over 100 designs. So if you want to support us, you can support us there. If you want to support us but you don't want to have to spend any money, that is perfectly fine. Please like, subscribe, comment and share. Those things all help us, and we love when people comment and have a nice little things to say, nice little chat. Anyway, so we are looking at the trial by Franz Kafka. This is for me, this is a reread. This is not my original copy. My original copy, I don't know where that ended up. I think I actually remember where I was when I finished reading it, and it is probably the most Kafkaesque experience. I was approaching Sydney on in the evening on a rail replacement bus in when I was 21. When I was 21. So it has been about 24 years since I have read this book. So that means I have changed. I have changed in relation to this book. I know that when I first read it, I read it as a very young person. I think that my knowledge of German writers consisted of about 3 names and about 5 works. I knew Franz Kafka, German-speaking writers, not Kafka is a Czech writer. He's an Austro-Hungarian Bohemian. But he is from Prague. So Franz Kafka, as Trials and Metamorphoses were what I knew. Thomas Mann, I knew Death in Venice, and I knew Goethe's The Sorrows of Young Werther. And that is it. That is all I knew of German literature. And so I read this much the same way that most people read Kafka when they read Kafka, that they open it up and they start reading and they have zero context for it, and it is like baffling and when you read it very young, it's like, oh yes, I understand what this is about. It's about being alienated from things, and it's like, okay, yeah, oui, when you are very young, yes, it is sort of the reading. That is sort of the Cliff Notes reading, I would say. That is if you go and you look at other videos, that's pretty much the reading that you will get on the trial. I had a look at some. And I had a look that there isn't that many more people know the Metamorphosis and know the trial. And I would say that is because it is a bit of a trial to get through. I was supposed to bring this ages ago, like weeks ago. Her ladyship talked about how we ended up in a complete muddle with books that were that we did not get read and things like that. So this was a bit harder to read than I remember. I remember that it was not the easiest read. So what is the book about? The book is about Joseph K. Joseph K. wakes up one morning, he's expecting his breakfast, he's a banker, He lives in a boarding house. He has a very good job, a very respectable job at the bank. He has a routine in life. He has a mistress as he goes see. He thinks his life is in order, and then two wardens turn up and they arrest him. For what? He doesn't know. They don't know. Nobody ever tells him what he is arrested for. And he goes through the novel, going through the trial, the idea of the trial. He goes to an interrogation and he completely screws that up. He's like, he completely screws that up, and he is solicited by several women. A woman from the interrogation court and the maid mistress of the advocate that he employs. It is a very hard book to say what it is, what is happening. There are various characters who move in and out, but they do not behave in a way that you would expect from a standard narrative. They come in, they have their little bits, they talk more about the court and about the trial. Everybody seems to know about his trial, which upsets him, and he becomes more and more obsessed about this trial. There's a chapter in the cathedral that includes a story that is otherwise published in the short stories before the law, and then there's a discussion of what this means. And you read this as a very young person and you go, I have no idea what this is. I do not know what this is. And I think that is quite a usual thing. I think a lot of people will use a word like existentialism, and it's like, oh, you can't do existentialism, sweeties. This is before Sartre. It can't be existential. It can't be existential. It is before Sartre and Camus. This is not an existential novel. So, what did I think of this reading it this time? Well, firstly, this time I came prepared. I bought a Cambridge Companion. I knew this thing is not for the faint-hearted. I need some backup. So I came prepared. It was actually that I read before I read this. Actually, I brought that for afterwards to have a bit of a look and get some context. One of the things that I saw, I was looking just at little articles, and one of them was talking about the work that Kafka did in his day job, because Kafka was not a full-time writer. A lot of writers are not full-time writers. Kafka published very little in his lifetime. The 3 novels that make up this volume were all posthumously published after his death. He actually wished these to be destroyed, which I will come to that. His day job. Now, I noticed a lot of images around Kafka, a lot of people's, the ways that people talk about Kafka, the ways that people talk about Franz Kafka make him seem simplified and really infantilized in some ways. The man was 41 when he died. He was not as young as I had actually thought, based on the public image of Kafka, and the public image of Kafka is quite see him as a, I think, an underdog or a victim of something. They are confusing the man and the work, I think. The man K, Joseph K, in this is not Kafka. He is not Kafka. The man Joseph K is pitiable. I would not call Kafka pitiable. Even the introduction to this, the introduction to the author, I thought was really interestingly written. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read a two bit that I thought really reinforced this pitiable image of Kafka. And it is curious that this is the image that the publisher of this book decided to put out. It says, for many years he worked a tedious job as a civil service lawyer investigating claims at the State Workers Accident Insurance Institute. He never married and published only a few slim volumes of stories during his lifetime. I was like, really? That's how you're going to define this man's life biographically? He worked a tedious job. A tedious job. Why are you saying that this is tedious? So this gives us this image of poor Kafka forced to do a boring office job. And they never married. Now, that is usually also part of the, oh, he was never able to marry. You know who else was never able to marry? But nobody pities him. Beethoven. Beethoven never married. Beethoven would have liked to have married. Beethoven had the misfortune of only falling in love with aristocratic ladies. And within the Austro-Hungarian world, or the Austrian world of Beethoven's early 19th century world, an aristocratic lady to marry a commoner would lose her aristocratic status. And I think that a great many aristocratic ladies who Beethoven fancied looked at him and thought, do I give up my position in society at the very top to marry a deaf, messy, bad-tempered composer? No, I do not think I will. They made the very sensible decision not to marry Beethoven. What did this mean? This means Beethoven did not marry. But we don't look at him with pity because he did not marry. It's just Beethoven. Could you imagine being married to Beethoven? Beethoven knocked a window into a wall of a rented apartment. I mean, good God, he would have been awful to live with. His own nephew tried to kill himself having lived with him. So, you didn't want to live with Beethoven. So, anyway, nobody speaks of Beethoven that way. Why do we speak of Kafka that way? Why is Kafka this pitiable? Now, the things that got my attention in this little piece of biographical information, and this is the bit that I think people do not look at. He was born in 1883. In 1906, so when he was 23, 23, he received a doctorate in jurisprudence. A doctorate in law, not just in law, in the law of the law. And you want to make this a pathetic little person who did a tedious office job. This isn't a tedious office job. He was very high in that job. And what was the job? What was this tedious job? This job was a job that was in a very curious position in the Austro-Hungarian bureaucracy. So this insurance company was at arm's length from the government because it was supposed to investigate industrialists and business people and people with money. The government wanted to keep these people on side, and so this government department, this sort of semi-autonomous government department, is being undermined by the very government that sets them up, because the government that sets them up is also going and siding with, like, putting things in place that will benefit not their own department that is trying to uphold the laws that exist already, but the interests of the industrialist. So he is working in this department that is somewhat hamstrung by its own bosses. And then you read the trial. And suddenly, the trial does not seem like a man against a machinery, but instead, it seemed like a abstracted frustrations of a man working in a department that is being actively undermined. Reading this and having had a lot more exposure to German culture of this period, he is in a world that is a huge German-speaking world. It includes all of Germany. It includes the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It abuts France, and it travels well into Eastern Europe and down towards Italy. This is a Central European German-speaking world. And to divorce it from that context and the context of the very late Austro-Hungarian Empire is to render this very difficult to understand. Now, we do not know exactly when Kafka wrote the trial, because he was writing this not with an idea in mind of publication. As he said, he asked his friend to burn the manuscripts. Now, when you read it and you think about the work he is doing and the position that he is in, all of a sudden this looks like the frustrations at the work abstracted to an almost absurd level. And what else in the German-speaking world is taking things and then abstracting them to an almost absurd level? German expressionism, which is not just films. It is an image that is attached to film, but it is also attached to art. It is also attached to literature. Now, if you go and read this as with an idea of German expressionism, it is at least a thought that is appropriate for the time. We think that it is believed that this was written between 1914 and 1915. It certainly, thinking of it more like the way that the German expressionist films and reading it in that mode, that this is more nightmare-like because you are processing something. And that this is abstracted because you are processing something. You are saying something without really saying something, because saying something really will get you in trouble and you don't want to get in trouble, so you abstract it. The German expressionist film, because you do not get German expressionist film till after 1920, German expressionist film is abstracting things to a point where, because it is too painful to look directly at this, it is too painful to look at this in the eye, so we abstract this and talk about this in a roundabout way. At least that is how we interpret German expressionist film. And I think that something similar happens. You can read this in a similar sort of way. Parce que, why? Because so many levels, there are characters who come in here that are characters, but they are not really, they are more tropes or types. You have the authority with the court, but the court is the court of the bureaucracy, because this is a very bureaucratic court. Is this the court of the legal system? Is this the court of the government? There is still an emperor, so technically the government is, and the court is entangled with each other. Is this? There is him. There is also Kay's uncle. Kay's uncle is a businessman, a landowner. He is upright. He's society. He is respected, and it is he who gets the advocate involved. So there's another strata of society, a different strata of society compared to the world of the bureaucracy. Kay himself belongs to the world of business. He is a banker. He works with businessmen. He is part of a machinery of the economy, of producing things. There is also the painter Tirelli, who is as much part of the system. Everybody belongs to the court. Everybody that Kay meet belong to or knows about the court, even though he was entirely ignorant of this when he was first arrested. He then finds that everybody knows who he is. The painter Tirelli, what is he? He is an artist. And yet the artist is also integrated into this court, into this society. And finally we come to the church, the cathedral. And in the cathedral we meet the priest, and obviously there is a church now in this. None of these people really come across as actual real people. Not really. Not really. There are female characters, but they are interesting in that they are not directly powerful. But they talk about the power of their influence, and they use the promise of their influence as a power over Kay, which is, I think, in some way a bit of a comment on the soft power of women, and in particular the feminine power, the power of suggestion, of seduction, of indirect power, of the ways that men and women deploy power differently. Kay's method of asserting his power is very direct, very abrupt, and he is constantly butting heads with the authority figures. He never really finds himself in a position where he gets the upper hand, even when he manages to aggressively harangue. It turns out that this was pointless. But there are women who keep saying to him, I can help you. I know lots of people. I can help you. What do I want out of this? What do I want out of this? What are you going to give me? the wife of the court official would like to be taken away from the student of the judge who keeps touching her. And the judge that now is having lecherous thoughts of her. The neighbor, he want to think well of him, but he end up lustfully pouncing on her like a teenager, and then is try to explain himself, but she is not having any part of this. And then there is Lenny, the advocate, nurse, mistress, helping anyone. She is somewhat mercenary. She sort of disappears, like most of the characters. When they don't seem to have any more place in the narratives, they just sort of vanish. They might be mentioned once or twice, but they just sort of are dispensed with. She is the most overt in terms of her quid pro quo. Her, you are a handsome young man, I would like to help you. What do I get in return? I want to be your mistress in return. So the female characters have this power, but which they wield, but they wield it very differently to the men. They are more covert. And it's possible that this is a way of saying that maybe this is the way that you get what it is that you are wanting, is maybe through more covert or more seductive powers, where especially when your full attack is not producing the results that you want. So those are very interesting characters. They also represent a lot of different elements of society, which makes me think that this is not a one-to-one, that this is more, these people are not people as much as tropes within society, and that these elements of society are not only at times in opposition to one another, but they are all symbiotic to one another. They all rely on one another. They all rely on the court. The court in terms of the court that is arresting Kay, or perhaps the court that is the imperial government. I think finally, the reason this book took so long to read, I mean, it was embarrassing, as it's like a 200-page book. But it is like this all the way through. Tightly written text of legal argument that go round and round and round and round and round. And I am able to read like academic texts, but legal stuff sort of, and from this perspective and this perspective and this perspective, and it's like, pick a side. It's sort of a bit like philosophy. I find philosophy a bit, So I did find, once I worked out, right, that's what's happening. Now I don't have to follow this quite as intently as I had been following it, because I had been trying to follow this really closely, and it turns out a lot of it is blather. It is from this perspective and this perspective. It's very legalese as this trial is explained. And when I realized that, I said, I can just sort of let it wash over me rather than trying to attend to every little detail. But until I realized that point, it was very, it was taking me a very long time to read this. I thought, I'm never going to get this thing read, but And it took an embarrassingly long time for me to realize how exactly I should read this. And I think that this is why I think that this was not where it would have been for being published. I think Kafka really did not necessarily mean this to be published. It doesn't flow like a proper narrative. It's not laid out like a proper narrative, which makes it difficult. I think this is a man who is discussing his frustrations at work in a highly abstracted manner. Still fascinating. I can understand why he maybe did not wish to see this published. I can understand that. If you think of it more as a journal of a particular time at work, perhaps, where the locked up frustrations of a very, very clever man. A man who gets a doctorate at 23 is a very clever man. A man who had obvious frustrations in his life, in his personal life, no doubt in his work life. And I think that is what he is doing. But he is doing it in this highly abstracted manner. And therefore, because it is literature, you can read whatever you want into it. Because especially being highly abstract, this can be living in a city. This can be an existential dread of modernity. This can be isolation and alienation from people. This can be living as an outsider in a society. All of these can be, are entirely valid readings of this. It can also be read as, you're having a tough day at work, aren't you? So, that is a trial. I mean, this is how I chose to read this. I am not saying you have to read this like this. I did find that a lot of the readings, once you decontextualize the book, which I know is I think one what was Janice, I think, talked about why we do not do that. Why we do not do that. Once you decontextualize it, it's becomes simplified, and once you become simplified, you get a very childish portrait of not only the novel but also of Kafka himself. Kafka did not ever want a cockroach on the front of the Metamorphoses, and I think that reading him in a very literal manner is probably not what the man would have wanted, coming from the world that he was coming from. He was doing something with this text. We cannot exactly know what he was doing with this text because he's been dead a very long time. Been dead 100 years? 100 years he has been dead. So that is how I chose to read this book this time. You read it, see what you think. But it can't be existentialism because it's not Sartre yet. No, just say. It's always good to remember that. You can't predate something. So anyway, that is the trial. I think it will be a very long time before I read another Kafka, if ever. I will. I am actually working on another video. The book arrived from England, so that one should be really interesting. We're still staying in German stuff. We are still staying in German stuff. Mais that is all from me. Do have a read of the trial. The narrative difficulties with it, I would say, are because this was not written with publication in mind. It is not even necessarily complete. So in terms of whatever Kafka wanted to do with this, so that has to be borne in mind when reading this, because it does not really conform exactly like a traditional narrative in that way. It can be read, it has a narrative, but the jump between chapter 8 and 9 and then 9 and 10, and it's like, how did we get here? How did we get here? I feel like there's bits missing, and there probably are bits missing. So be aware of that when you read this. It is not quite as polished as perhaps it was intended to be. So anyway, that is a trial, and I will be back again and with another book later. So au revoir. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.